Hi, I'm Jason Ball, President and CEO of the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce and the Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development. I am recording this message to you all at 8:30 on Friday morning, September 12th. I wanted to share some thoughts with our membership because I've had several stakeholders and members reach out to me recently about a study that was commissioned by Exarban and performed by Development Consultants International related to Nebraska and Lincoln's economic growth. Now you can find that study on the Exarban website. I believe it's right on their landing page as we're recording this. And what the study will demonstrate through some data is compared to other peer states and other peer cities, the state of Nebraska and Lincoln and Omaha specifically may not be growing economically as fast as other peers. Now, this is certainly distressing news, but I have to stress also, it's not new to us. In fact, in the past few years, there have been several studies commissioned using different types of data and measures, but all saying the same general theme. Studies have included studies performed by the Bureau of Business Research here at UNL, the Business College at the University of Nebraska, Omaha, studies by the Nebraska State Chamber of Commerce, the Omaha Chamber of Commerce, and even Lincoln's own preparation for developing our strategic plan, Vitality Lincoln, which you can find on our website. The information has been there. Nebraska's economy, while it has many great benefits and is doing a lot of things right, also is not growing at the rate that I think any of us wish it would be. That's pretty much what the study says, and I'll let you read it for yourself. But I think the real question that our stakeholders and members have been asking me is, Jason, what happens next? Well, our recommendation now is the same recommendation we had last year, the year before that, and for the 10 years and couple decades before that. We need to compete. We need to make Nebraska competitive compared to our other states and cities by an aggressive effort at recruiting and diversifying the types of businesses that we have in this economy. That is what will create a growing economy. That is what will draw more people into the state, more people pursuing a higher, better quality of life, and more job opportunity and economic empowerment. That's been the message of our program and the focus of our program going back decades, and it will continue to be. Now, because of the nature of the study and its focus on things like our relative competitiveness with respect to incentives for recruitment, and by the way, we were 10th worst in the nation at a state level in this study. It also rates things like our strength in income tax or strength in property tax. And we all know that we're trying to improve in income tax, and property tax is a real and legitimate concern for every taxpayer and homeowner and property owner in the state. And because of that component of the study, certainly public policy is going to be one of the things that this spurs more conversation about. And so possibly by the time you see this video, or maybe shortly thereafter in the future, I anticipate there may be more studies, more policy recommendations that Exarban, other business leaders, and other chambers of commerce, even our own organization, may be making in the not terribly distant future. Good public policy is the foundation for economic growth. Economies that benefit from having a strong pro-business public policy approach are the economies that are going to win in such a competitive environment for businesses and workforce to come and live and work and set down roots in a state and in a city. And so our focus really needs to be, from a public policy standpoint, to invest in the programs and assets that drive economic vitality. And what does that look like? I'll give you some examples at a state and local level. At the state level, we've been encouraging policy leaders to please invest and empower a strong Department of Economic Development. I've practiced economic development in 4 states in my career. I've competed against many more for projects. I've won some, I've lost some. But I will tell you, the states that win consistently are states that invest in and develop programs for a strong Department of Economic Development. And that Department of Economic Development needs to lead the efforts from marketing Nebraska to the rest of the world. We have a tradition of this. This is something we got really good at around 2010, for example. We had a strong approach to coming out of COVID, for example. We need to get back to the things that DED needs to do, because only the Department of Economic Development can carry that message on behalf of every city and every community in the state and establish the relationships that they need statewide to organize the assets in all the communities of the state. Here at the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, we can only influence those decisions at a local level, and I'll talk about that more. The state also needs to focus on investments in infrastructure, but I would say they need to target investments in infrastructure in areas where our population is and has been growing. The I-80 corridor in particular is where most of the people are, it's where the growing needs are, and it's where some of the most expensive fixes are necessary to invest in. It will outstrip local resources for any of those local communities, no matter how large or small, to invest in the projects that they need to not only ensure safety for their citizens, but protect future growth opportunities to recruit. We also need to fund the foundational types of programs that fuel research and startups. We need to invest in things like the Prototype Grant, which returned $13 into this economy for every one that's been invested. We need to invest in our university system, which not only has implications for our workforce, but also returns $10 for every one invested by the state. These are just a few examples of policy positions we've had for a long time and will continue to advocate for at the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. Looking locally, again, we have been doing this work and will continue to do this work. We need to invest more and work with partners in this community to prepare sites for growth. Right now, Lincoln does not have enough sites for industrial and large business expansion opportunities. And we are getting outcompeted by some of our peers and some of our regional competitors too. An important part of those sites is we've got to continue to invest in infrastructure, roads, electric service, broadband service, natural gas, water utilities. These are things that we can prepare ahead of time to have a business locate at, and that ensures the business can get on site, do its construction, be up and moving faster. That is how local communities can compete. In addition to that, we need to focus on winning the race when it comes to development services. The faster a business can get into the development services process, receive approval to start their project, receive the approvals to review, and then complete that project and get up and running, the faster we can have more economic activity right here in Lincoln. And that's not going to cost us anything additional. It just takes moving at the speed of business and being a great partner. Finally, at a local level, from a policy perspective, we need to develop new financing alternatives. It's great that we passed Lincoln on the Move. That was something that the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce was extremely supportive of because we needed a resource to continue to make investments in our road and street system. But new financing alternative approaches have got to be examined. These can include things like SIDs or other incentive districts or investment districts. These can include other financing mechanisms, either at a private level or a public level. But we have got to find new ways to invest in our growing road and infrastructure network more quickly than we have available to us today. Finally, at a local level, we need to make sure we continue to market. And I'm very proud of what the Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development and the Lincoln Chamber have been doing in partnership with Lancaster County and other partners to market Lincoln in new and different ways. For the first time, this agency has taken on the responsibility of recruiting and hiring a PR firm externally to tell Lincoln's story outside of the state. And as we record this, we have received over 50 new pieces of PR, earned media, that we did not have to pay for, that appeared in other local periodicals that focused on some of our recent events like the AVCA and Gravel Worlds and other sporting activities that we've done. Or our startup community, for which we've appeared on television networks run by the NASDAQ, for example. telling that story that Lincoln has the assets to surprise people that have never been here. And if they do come here, they can be successful in business, they can pursue a rewarding career, and maybe in an industry or at a business type that they might not have expected to find. We're going to continue pushing forward on telling Lincoln's story that way. And that brings me to the last point I wanted to share. The sky is not falling. Now, I know that the information in this study and the previous studies I mentioned is concerning, and we should take it seriously. But at the same time, I'm encouraging our members and stakeholders to remember that there's a lot happening that is right in Lincoln. We feel like we're making excellent progress towards the goals outlined in our Vitality Lincoln Economic Growth Strategy, which again, you can find on our website at lcoc.com. But we have completed a South Beltway. We're doing expansions on capacity for the Beltway along Highway 77. And we have started the long-term work of funding and organizing an effort to get an East Beltway built with many of our partners here in the region. We're pursuing the establishment of a Lincoln Convention Center, a long-time need, without which we are missing 70% of our total market potential when it comes to recruiting conventions and events here. And those conventions and events bring visitors, sometimes for the first time to our city, many of whom may put in the back of their head, boy, I could see myself there. I could see my company having a presence there. Those conventions and those tourism opportunities are ways that growing communities are able to get new people interested in coming and moving there. In addition to that, we've had our first very successful season at the Sandhills Global Youth Complex. By the time we get to the end of the season, I think we will be at just about 2,500 games played with a huge economic impact. More on that when it's time to tell that story. And just recently, we completed hosting the American Volleyball Coaches Association event, hosting thousands of people in our downtown. Again, many of whom are visitors that have been here for the first time and were so impressed with what they saw. That's going to open doors for future events. I mentioned that we funded our local option sales tax, Lincoln on the Move. That's going to be another 8 years of having access to about $18 to $20 million additional to invest in our road and infrastructure network. Project O Street will be funded by it. And goodness knows we've had plenty of roadway construction in Lincoln this summer. But when those are completed, I think drivers are really going to be happy with their improved driving experiences on those services. Along with the City of Lincoln and other partners, we're pursuing Water 2.0 to ensure sufficient water access for the growth of the city. That's something we need to be thinking long-term about. This chamber has been a leader when it comes to organizing events and programs and support for our startup community and entrepreneurship community. We work with all our partners in that space, and that has been one of the most successful and rewarding parts of this program. There is no doubt that startups are going to be key to making sure we remain and increase our economic vibrancy here in Lincoln. I mentioned what we're doing in marketing. Along with that, we're targeting specific industries that we've done studies on that we think can and should be interested in a presence in the Midwest and a presence in Lincoln. We have so much to build on and so much more than I just listed off. People get into our community for the first time and they look around and they say, wow, I didn't expect this. And so we've got to tell that story, because when we set the expectations that authentically characterize the great things in Lincoln, I think businesses, I think people will really be interested in learning more and maybe coming and participating in this community. So we will be tireless in pursuing that strategy. Now, as I mentioned, more news may come out. I anticipate it'll be consistent with this type of numbers that we've seen in this study. And so I want to encourage everybody to focus on the tradition of winning that Nebraska has. We know how to win projects. We know how to bring new business investment here. We know how to support entrepreneurs here. But it's going to take, in many cases, the political will and the support of our leadership to establish the right programs and assets to get that done. And if we do, that is going to be our long-term answer to our concerns about property tax in the state. I know that many others have suggested alternative ways to do that. And those are legitimate conversations to be had in the public square. But the areas that struggle the least with taxation are the areas that are growing the fastest. And that's why it should be our focus to make sure that we have economic growth and economic diversification here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and throughout the entire state.